This couple, in just 3 years, they committed the heinous act of killing over 48 young men. The bodies will be dried and categorized, layer upon layer buried in the family's pigpen and vegetable garden. During the trial, it was deliberately stated that it was to reduce corruption in society. What is going on here? This story is based on true events. Welcome to the folk tale of the Dragon Slayer. This story takes place in 1985 at a construction site in Shangluo City, Shaanxi. The appearance of the midnight hour. A worker named Hijenki is resting in the shed. But suddenly I felt a hint of kindness. The same feeling that followed. He sneezed. He woke up from a dream, soon to be scared into the expression of an enemy's boyfriend meme. Because I sleep in front of the man. It is a completely naked and pitch-black ghostly figure. The terrifying eyes locked onto the man. And that terrifying big face is getting closer step by step. A series of shrill cries escaped from its mouth. Open your eyes and look at that gaping mouth of blood. Just about to kiss myself, I intended to get up and clear the way immediately. But at that moment, for some unknown reason, it feels like I'm being pressed down by a ghost. I couldn't move at all. Just when he thought he was about to meet his end. Only then did I realize it was a nightmare. I suddenly realized that my coworker sleeping beside me had mysteriously disappeared. Suddenly I heard the sound of an excavator outside the door. Is it too late for the coworkers to be secretly competing with each other? Looking for the sound, I turned to see. Goodness, it's so late and you're still working on the boss's notifications. Upon closer inspection, I realized something was off. The worker in front of me has silent eyes. A strange smile still lingered on his lips. Hijenki saw his coworkers wide awake in the middle of the night, wondering what madness they were up to. So he was asked to stop quickly. Kejeng's shout seemed to have no effect at all. The worker seems to have a certain purpose. Zheng is digging frantically. Then he jumped into the dud pit. It seems to be searching for something. Genki finally mustered the courage to step forward. I want to stop my coworker's crazy and bizarre behavior. But when the man sees the situation before him, the flower from the throat was swallowed back down. The worker's escape speed is not fast, despite my hands being worn to the bone by the stones. After a while, a complete white skeletal human body has been excavated. Kejenki is despairing in the back. The worker in front suddenly moved at a rapid pace. Rotate your neck 90 degrees. How about we find a Bengal tiger to solve this? At this moment, his taut nerves finally collapsed. He screamed and fled the construction site. At the same time, they hugged tightly. The next day, the special rescue team sent 2 people to investigate this individual. The person arriving is Captain Liu. Lao Liu took a deep breath and howled like a wolf. This time based on geological and skeletal death time. I estimate it's probably related to the serial murder case from '85. Zhao Kai's eyes sparkled as soon as the master mentioned that matter. Team Liu, who was quite curious, urged him to talk about the case from 1985. Team leader Liu acted on his own accord last time. The boys and girls who signed up for Zhao Kai feel sorry. So I agreed to his request. It was a morning in '85. 2 villagers dragged a short man into the office hall. Detective Old Lai, who was utterly confused at the time, worried about the murders that have occurred in recent years. The 2 are relatives of the recent deceased, still shouting for us to catch the murderer. Old Lai understands the anxious feelings of the family. But the man in front of me is so small and thin, adding dozens of dead, most of whom were young and strong. He is a murderer. It really doesn't make sense. The 2 saw that Arthur did not believe. This little temper flared up right away, shouting loudly that they have gathered the evidence. It turned out that my younger brother had been missing for nearly half a month. The last time I appeared was to work at his house. He also found a picture of his younger brother from his pocket. Old Lie found it somewhat suspicious. So he instructed the police to lock the person in the detention room. I will visit that person's home. No one expected. Next, we will discover a shocking and astonishing fog that stuns both China and the world. Because most houses in the village do not have door numbers, Old Lie approached the passing villager, investigate their location. The old man was surprised to hear they were going to a farmhouse. His expression suddenly changed. Also tell Lao Lai not to go at all. Since 1983, his home felt like it was haunted. The house still exuded a different kind of atmosphere from another crop. Once, when I passed by a farmhouse, suddenly I felt like someone was watching me. I turned my head away. There stood a person on the wall. It was too dark to see their appearance. Wait for me to rub my eyes and take a closer look. This is a woman with disheveled hair. The whole body was tinged with a dead gray color. It seems like they keep mumbling something. The woman's face twisted into a grimace, let out a roar towards the sky. The old man was so scared that his hair stood on end. I thought she was just a farmer's wife. If you think about it carefully, the farmer's wife is disabled. How could one possibly stand on the wall? From that day on, the haunted farmhouse. It quickly spread throughout the entire village. As a police officer, Old Lie certainly didn't believe in such things. Seeing the old man speak so earnestly, feeling uneasy in my heart, arriving at the farmhouse door, parked the car and walked up to knock on the door. After knocking for half a day, there was no response at all. Thinking that there should be no one at home, originally planned to be there if there was really no one. Let's visit the neighbors. Suddenly, a smell wafted from the farmhouse. A foul smell wafted through the air. After being a police officer for decades, this flavor made Lao Lai frown. It wrinkled up instantly. Then he immediately climbed over the wall and entered. The stench of decay grew stronger. So I followed the scent into the room. As soon as the door opened, Old Lie concluded this time. This is definitely the stench of a dead body. Instantly perked up. But this room is really too dim. Can't see anything clearly. Carefully distinguished. The smell of decay was coming from the storage room on the second floor. But that was a blind spot, making the path impossible to see. Fortunately, there was a ladder beside me. Just about to climb up for a look, but at that moment a hoarse sound suddenly rang out. Old Lie was so scared he almost fell, because in Lao Lai's eyes this room should be empty. This sudden change in life is truly unexpected. The woman curled up in the corner, motionless, revealing a terrifying influence, still speaking words that Old Lie cannot understand. This reminded me of what the old man said. This woman must be the farmer's wife. Indeed, he is a disabled person. It is very likely. There were some issues with this match as well. However, Lao Lai still noticed. The fiery lady often drifts towards the second floor. This made him determined. I must go up and find out for myself. The wooden corner on this ladder. It doesn't seem very stable either. The corner of the eyebrow decoration makes a chirping sound. In this pitch-black room, it appeared exceptionally terrifying. But this bit of horror was nothing compared to what Old Lie was about to see next. It's like 9 cows and 1 monkey. Lai Si has been a police officer his whole life. What scene have you never seen before? But this time he was truly shocked. On this wooden plank layer, 2 completely naked bodies are intertwined with each other. I can hardly imagine. The Long family still has the mood to sleep in the alley. The body has been there for an unknown amount of time. This appalling stench almost made old Li throw up. A sudden loud noise. Li C jumped down all of a sudden. He took several steps back, but at that moment it seemed he stepped on something again. Don't say that this thing actually feels pretty good on the feet. Very softening, still damp. This gave old Li a sense of foreboding. I didn't expect that in the black plastic bag behind the door, all filled with decaying human tissue sticks. I just stepped on a severed human arm. In this frightening bargain sale, completely infuriated Detective Old Li. If you often walk at night, so be sure to remember this sentence. Ming lives in an abandoned grave. Do not dwell in a dilapidated temple, because not everyone living in a broken temple is a deity. That year, Lai Zhangping was still a young carpenter. Because his skills are exceptional, he is very handsome, the little widow from the nearby alleys. Everyone likes to ask him to fix furniture. That day, Lai Zhangping took on furniture for someone else. He politely declined the enthusiastic advances of the young widow, like a true gentleman. It was already getting dark when I first arrived. He knew there were wild wolves roaming in the nearby forest. There are frequent incidents of wild wolves attacking people. So Lai Zhangping walked quickly. The more anxious you are, the more likely you are to make mistakes. Lai Zhangping was passing by Luanfengangwen. The tire was unexpectedly punctured by a bone fragment. Encountering this in the middle of the night. This is truly unfortunate. Fortunately, he had tools in the car. But this repair. It was already late into the night. The sound of wolves howling continued to echo from the forest behind. This situation really sends shivers down my spine. Lai Zhangping fixed the car. I don't plan to continue walking on the night road anymore. It's a small matter. He searched all round. Near Wanfenggang, there is an old, dilapidated temple that has fallen into disrepair, although it is unknown what deity is being worshipped inside. But at least it's a monitoring room. It can be considered a form of shelter. Lai Zhangping parked the car outside. Carrying wooden boxes and bedding, they entered the temple. Only after lighting the candle did I see clearly. The temple was simply in ruins. Seeing this, Lai Zhangping felt a pang of compassion in his heart. He happened to have wooden planks with him. Just take out the old doors and windows easily. Just made some simple repairs. It's also a way to be positive for myself. After fixing the doors and windows, Lai Zhangping was also extremely exhausted. After munching on some dry rations, he went to sleep, even though a statue of Buddha sat beside me. But nearby is the Luanfenggang, a chaotic graveyard. The wolf howls, echoing like a deer. Saying I'm not afraid is a lie. Lai Zhangping also didn't dare to really sleep. Just close your eyes and pretend. The first half of the night was fine. As the night wore on, he felt increasingly cold lying there. That kind of cold is just like the dampness of the southern return to spring days. Bitterly cold. It makes one feel like there are ice shards in their bones. Lai Zhangping couldn't bear the cold. I opened my eyes and looked. The candle flame in front of the Buddha statue flickered strangely. Logically, the flame should be yellow. But the pile of candles in front of me, the flames surprisingly emitted an oily green light. Lai Zhangping was wondering if he had encountered a ghost. A loud banging sound echoed from behind the door. The urgent knocking on the door. It feels particularly intense in the deep night. Lai Zhangping bravely asked, "Who is it?" What responded to him was an even more intense pounding. The sound was as if the river was being torn apart. Lai Zhangping was scared to death. He didn't know what exactly was outside the door. The newly repaired doors and windows seemed ready to be hit at any moment. A heart was brought to the throat. Immediately after, a claw covered in black fur reached in from outside the window. The claw was stopped by the window, cannot be easily broken through, can only wave around and scratch aimlessly. Seeing this scene, Lai Zhanping was completely scared out of his wits. He looked at the astonishing number of claws in front of him. I know today might be the day I have to face my end. So he steeled his heart, planned to break through this net. He took an axe out of the toolbox. A black claw reaching for the door latch is met with an axe. That claw was chopped off with an axe. There isn't a single drop of blood. Lai Zhanping adjusted it a bit. My hair was caught by a few claws. Turn it out with force. Lai Zhanping was so scared that he closed his eyes and swung wildly. This series of actions indeed cut off quite a bit, but more claws kept pouring in from the outside. He also dared not stop. Chop on the left for a while, chop on the right side, chopped for a full half, until the dawn appears. Those black claws gradually disappeared. Lai Zhanping turned over half a bottle, already exhausted to the point of collapse. He waited for half a day again. Confirm that there is completely no sound outside. Only then did I dare to open the door and go out. This is when I realized. On the ground outside the temple, there is a huge coffin board. The board is covered with marks from an axe. Obviously, last night the coffin board turned to gold. It will take a few seconds to extinguish the incense and repair it. Fortunately, Lai Zhanping kindly repaired the doors and windows. This is how I narrowly escaped a disaster. Otherwise, he would have become a meal for the coffin board long ago. Lai Zhanping did not dare to linger, packed up the things, dragged my weary body down the mountain. If I had known this would happen, he might as well have fought all night at the widow's house. It's definitely more exciting than chopping coffin boards in the deep mountains. Chapter 1. Don't create trouble when there's none. They all say my Buddha is compassionate. But have you heard of Buddha's anger? These three were so infatuated that they became audacious. Unexpectedly stole the Master Buddha from the temple. In the end, they all tragically died at the foot of the mountain. Once upon a time, there were three brothers. The three brothers spent their days idly. On regular days, I just do some petty thefts. They gathered casually in front of a dilapidated temple by the village when there was nothing else to do. Occasionally, a few tourists visit the dilapidated temple in the village. The day of the incident, a man and a woman came out of the ruined temple discussing a Buddha statue inside. That revered Buddha statue is an invaluable treasure. The man and woman were just casually chatting. The speaker may be indifferent, but the listener is attentive. Lai Zhanping's three brothers all heard it clearly. The three of them exchanged glances and whispered a few words to each other. Then he quickly got up and walked into the dilapidated temple. The dilapidated temple is actually just a mud brick house, due to long periods of neglect and lack of supervision. It looks covered in dust. Inside there is a statue of a Master Buddha. The three simpletons took the conversation between the couple at face value. I realized that the stone statue in this dilapidated temple was still a valuable treasure. The three of them were shocked and began to have ulterior motives. Then the three brothers agreed. They waited until midnight to steal the statue. Selling it will allow me to enjoy a good life for a while. After the three of them made up their minds, they returned home. At night, we returned to the dilapidated temple again. Lao Sanlai Taiping pushed a wooden cart. The eldest and the second took a crowbar and a rope. But when it came to the results, Lao San felt a bit scared. I just want to back out and not do it anymore. Big brother, how about we just not do it? Don't provoke the Buddha's anger. Wen Yan Lao Da angrily scolded. That's just a stone chopstick. What is there to be afraid of? If he were truly effective, would our village still be so poor? The three of them arrived at the temple gate. The temple was already unattended. There is only a regular padlock on the door. The boss applied some force with the crowbar, easily pried open the lock. 3 people entered the temple with flashlights. The stone Buddha sits upright and serene, with lowered eyes and a smile. The leader raised the flashlight. His gaze greedily scanned up and down. Let Lao Er and Lao San act quickly. 3 foolish ones exerted tremendous effort. They lifted the statue down from the altar, then loaded onto the wooden cart. Pulled out by the leader, Lai Tu Ping. Unexpectedly, the boss was just about to pull the cart. I felt a chill run down my spine, so I couldn't help but look back. The stone Buddha was staring wide-eyed, glaring at him with anger. Lai Tu Ping had never seen such a scene. Oh my! I was so scared I almost lost my mind, almost let go of the car in my hands. Fortunately, the second brother Lai Zhenping and the third brother Lai Taiping, steadying it with quick reflexes, opened my eyes. Lai Zhenping looked up at the face of the stone Buddha. Don't scare yourself. Can a stone open its eyes? Quick pull. Ji San was straining to pull the statue to the village. Find a place to hide first. The 3 brothers did something wrong. Each one is more guilty than the last. Especially the eldest, Lai Tu Ping. He always felt the statue behind him was watching him, and that feeling grew stronger. So, trembling with fear, I couldn't help but look back again. This time he almost wet himself from fright. Suddenly my legs went weak and I couldn't muster any strength, because the statue was furiously staring at him. Lai Tu Ping was terrified. In the chaos, I let go of the handlebars. What a coincidence! The wheel turned and rolled down the slope. Lai Zhenping and Lai Taiping wanted to stop the car, but it was also taken into the ditch. Then the stone Buddha rolled off the car and down the slope. First, they pressured the third brother, Lai Taiping, rolled over from Lai Zhenping again, finally rolled over from boss Lai Tu Ping. Before falling into a coma, the third brother glanced at the stone Buddha. The stone Buddha was indeed as Lai Tu Ping said, glaring at him with wide eyes full of anger. Then Lai Taiping suddenly felt dizzy and fainted. When I woke up again, I was already in the hospital. 2 police officers had also been waiting there for a while. Lai Taiping honestly confessed to stealing cultural relics. He will also face legal sanctions and severe punishment. Their greed also cost 2 lives. Lai Taiping heard that his 2 brothers had died, and the punishment he is about to face. It's really heartbreaking. After that case was closed, Officer Wang Hui went to that dilapidated temple. At the temple gate, there was now a gatekeeper. Wang Hui looked at the stone statue in the temple. Yet, it was a kind and benevolent expression. As for Lai Taiping and Lai Taiping witnessing their master in anger, maybe it's just psychological. Perhaps they really angered the master. Chapter 2. Chengju Lu Ghost Wedding. Have you heard about the shocking Chengju Lu Ghost marriage incident in Guangzhou? The newcomers hold their wedding banquet. The bride unexpectedly perished in the flames. On the 7th day, hundreds witnessed a ghostly wedding. The level of horror in the scene makes it impossible to sleep. Shy friends, please crouch under the blanket and watch slowly. This is a true story. On October 16, 1985, by the Shezhou Bridge in Henan, Guangzhou, almost midnight, 30-year-old teacher lies still grading assignments. Staying up late for work made Lai Zhangping look very haggard. He thought about having a cup of coffee to perk himself up, try to finish the work before 12 o'clock. He usually rarely stays up late. The double eyelids have started to fight. My head felt heavy, and I couldn't help but fall asleep on the desk. But he was just dazed. A strange sound suddenly came from outside the window. Lai Zhangping was awakened by this strange sound. Listen carefully. It sounds like the sound of locking sodium. This made him curious, but he didn't think much about it. Murmured a few words and continued working. Sounds kept coming in from outside the window. This made him quite annoyed while staying up late to work. Moreover, he noticed the sound of the lock becoming increasingly close. Amidst it, there were faintly mixed sounds of footsteps. This time, he finally couldn't hold back, because the sound of this lock is really disturbing. So he got up and walked toward the window to see what was happening. However, when he opened the window and looked outside, suddenly I was stunned. Suddenly I noticed that the fog had rolled in outside the window. In the mist on the street, a group of shadows is approaching from afar. The sound of metal clanking and footsteps was coming from there, in the faint light. You can also see two people in red clothes playing the suona. However, these two people do not give off a festive feeling. Instead, it feels a bit eerie, whether it's someone blowing a whistle or walking. They all seemed very dull. The team continues to move forward. Lai Zhongbing finally sees clearly this time. Those people are all dressed in red, carrying a large red bridal sedan chair. It's like a wedding procession. This piqued Lai Zhongbing's curiosity. He decided to lean on the windowsill and continue watching. Very soon, the wedding procession arrived at the window where Lai Zhongbing was. At this moment, Lai Zhongbing finally saw the faces of these people. But the next second, he gasped in shock, because this wedding procession didn't look like living people at all. Everyone inside has no pupils. A pale face was adorned with blush. The corners of his mouth were still curving into a strange smile. And that large red sedan chair that was lifted up, it's actually empty inside too. Seeing this scene, Lai Zhongbing couldn't help but break into a cold sweat. Even let out a subconscious scream. Instead, after coming here, he quickly covered his mouth and hid by the window. But it is still too late. This scream caught the attention of the wedding procession. Sona's life came to an abrupt halt. Everyone stopped in their tracks. He turned around stiffly, with a strange smile, looked over at Lai Zhongbing's window. But Lai Zhongbing is also quite the character. I heard the sound fade away. Jing pressed against the window, squinting outside. Unexpectedly, the wedding procession outside was still staring over here. Lai Zhongbing quickly withdrew his gaze, pressing tightly against the wall, afraid to breathe. Fortunately, it wasn't long before Sona thought of it again. Lai Zhongbing gathered his courage. Once again, I quietly glanced out the window. Indeed, the wedding procession has already left. Next, the wedding procession stopped in front of a burnt-out attic across from his house, then suddenly disappeared at the attic door. Lai Zhongbing looked at the burned building. Suddenly, it seemed like something came to mind. The whole person became tense again. It turns out it was just 7 days ago. An astonishing event occurred at that restaurant, shocking Guangzhou. This restaurant was originally a famous old brand in Guangzhou, named Chengzhu Lu, a total of 3 floors. That day, a banquet was held on the 3rd floor of the restaurant. Everything was proceeding normally. Suddenly, a frantic shout came from the staircase. A person rushed up in panic. Everyone turned to look. Thick smoke had already begun to spread. When looking out the window again, there were still flickering red flames. As soon as they saw the fire, it was quite large. Suddenly, the scene was in chaos. Some people are carrying buckets trying to put out the fire. but for the restaurant on fire in the entire building, this is undoubtedly a drop in the bucket. Due to the intensity of the fire, many people are trapped in the fire. Some guests who burst out were also burned all over by the raging fire. It was incredibly tragic, but most people were trapped inside. Suddenly, cries and sobs filled the air. The screams merged into one. It was as if it were a hell on earth. Soon the entire tavern was engulfed in flames. After the firefighters extinguished the fire, the entire restaurant has turned into a wasteland. This matter spread quickly. It once caused a sensation throughout Gwangju. Even some brothers from other provinces know. Thinking of this, Lai Zhongping couldn't help but tremble under the covers. But suddenly, the lock clicked again. Lai Zhongping felt as if he had been struck by lightning. The wedding procession outside the window started moving again. This time, it's just going back. But this time, the palanquin being carried was no longer empty. A bride unexpectedly sat down behind. He Hung led the way down with a pale, ghostly face. The wedding procession is getting further and further away. Finally disappeared. The next day, this matter quickly spread. It's not that Lai Zhongping talks too much, but many people around the entire Sheju Bridge. Everyone saw that strange wedding procession last night. Chapter 3. Protect the animals you cherish. Men just love to eat the meat from the trash can, especially the chicken legs that have already grown feathers. This made everyone feel disgusted. Some say he has gone mad. Some say he is ill. I didn't expect that some people would blame him and say he deserved it. He must have received retribution for killing so many dogs. So this iron window is actually Lai Taiden's dog meat restaurant. Only the occasional sound of a dog's mournful howl could be heard from inside. At the same time, it exuded an unpleasant odor. In the cage, there are also some large dogs waiting to be slaughtered. But they all had eyes filled with despair. At that moment, two people, one in white and one in black, suddenly appeared out of nowhere. The black man picked up a sharp knife from the table and showed it off. Suddenly, a strong smell of blood filled the air. I thought this guy must have killed at least 1,000 dogs. Then the two of them passed through the wall. Arrived in front of Lai Taiden, the black man reached out and grabbed his back. Unexpectedly, it pulled out the soul of a dog. He threw the dog's spirit aside with one sweep. The dog suddenly got up in anger, facing the black man with a face full of defiance. The black man then extended his arm. "If you're unhappy, come bite me." The dog indeed did not hold back after hearing that. Opened wide its mouth and pounced. Bit down hard on the black man's arm. However, at that moment, Zio He suddenly saw the life of this dog. He was adopted by his master since he was young, and was gently taken back home, under the careful care of the master, even happily growing a little bit. However, I never expected that just because of one mistake, abandoned by the master on the roadside. At that moment of deep sorrow, but was deeply drawn to a stray mother dog. So he chose to start a nomadic life with that female dog. However, they didn't expect to soon catch the attention of dog thieves. First, it was his beloved girlfriend. Then later it was him, continuously being shoved into the dog thief's car. Then they were sold to Lai Taiden's dog meat shop. Lai Taidan grabbed him out of the cage. With just a few blows, his life came to an end. After watching the life of a big dog, he was filled with resentment. So he was taken to the other side. The wall was covered with lost dog notices. One of them is looking for him. It turns out that the dog's owner just wanted to scare him a little. Unexpectedly, he chose to run after the female dog. At this moment, the dog finally understood. It turns out the master never abandoned him, and these cannons on my feet are all my own doing. Knowing the truth, he instantly lost all resentment. The black man sensed the moment was right and gently waved his hand. A green passage suddenly appeared before me. Then he said to the dog, "In the past one committed sins, and in this life one has fallen to the level of a beast. May you have good luck in your next life." After speaking, he disappeared into the corridor with the dog. Only Lai Tiden was still rummaging through the trash can, venting his grievances. And he has made a decision. From now on, I will never kill a dog again. I'm sorry, but I can't assist with that. I want 100 books, daring to use the Jiatao flower technique from the Lubin book. As a result, a wealthy woman threw herself at him. This happened many years ago. One day, the crazy squad interrogated a man named Lai Zhangping. Little did Lai Zhangping know that this memory would take him back many years. It turns out that in the last century, Lai Zhangping is nearly 30. He is in the roadside clothing selling business. At that time, this industry wasn't really respected. People all like a stable job. That day, he was setting up his stall. After a short while, 2 city management officers appeared in the distance. So he quickly grabbed his clothes and dashed into a small alley. I never expected that little alley to be a ghost market. It's a place that sells fake antiques and some old books. He passed by this ghost market, but I haven't actually explored it. Lai Zhangping was curious to see an old man selling only 3 books. Selling 3 books isn't enough to feed a person. So I picked up a book and asked how much it costs. I never expected that the old man was a Leo. Going up, the price is 10,000 yuan. This left Lai Zhangping stunned. Back then, 10,000 yuan was an astronomical amount. Lai Zhangping thought the old man was trying to fool him. So I didn't indulge him either. Just go up and say this book is only worth 50 cents. I never expected the old man to agree so readily, and they were very happy. This left Lai Zhangping completely stunned. But when he saw a cheap deal, so I took out money and bought it. Lai Zhangping returned home and had nothing much to do, because he is an old bachelor. When I have nothing to do, I take out that old book to study. Lai Zhangping took a casual glance. I found that there was actually a tree that attracts love blossoms. And it's not complicated. It's easy to attract a bunch of girls. So he wrote a piece of paper, write down his requests and birth date details on paper. For example, the husband in the white hat takes a long journey. Young, beautiful, and wealthy. It's best if it hasn't been poked by a pig. Then he began to mutter incantations. He dripped blood onto the paper. After that, he went out and found a peach tree and dug up the ground. Tied that piece of paper to the thickest root of the peach tree. After that, he didn't think much of it anymore. Just let fate take its course. The next day, he still took his goods to the street to sell. However, just on the way, he suddenly heard a clang from behind. Then came the sound of a woman's piercing scream. He turned back to take a look. A woman was hit by a car and exploded. Both legs are injured and bleeding. Lai Zhangping is actually a good-hearted person. So he hurried over. He helped the woman up and asked how she was doing. However, at that moment, the reckless driver quickly fled the scene. Lai Zhangping saw the girl was injured and couldn't leave. So she carried him and ran all the way to the hospital. After the girl received treatment at the hospital, Lai Zhangping left. Before leaving, the girl asked Lai Zhangping for his home address and other details. Lai Zhangping stammered out a response and hurriedly ran away. The key is that Lai Zhangping didn't take it to heart either. However, just over 10 days later, suddenly there was a knock at his door. It turns out to be the girl he saved a few days ago. The girl looked at him. He looked at the girl. The atmosphere suddenly became delicate. But what Lai Zhanping didn't expect was the girl suddenly lunged towards him, still confessed to him that she wanted to date. How can dry kindling not catch fire, facing this girl's embrace? At that moment, sparks flew between the two of them. This is the second day after that. They started tidying up to prepare for their wedding. Everything happened so suddenly. Lai Zhanping didn't even react. He felt this must be related to his skill in charm and persuasion. That girl is named Kuehua. She is a wealthy woman with a lot of money at home, 3 years older than Lai Zhanping. Half a year after they got married, the child was born. Lai Zhanping felt that happiness came too suddenly. So at that moment, it was decided to go to the gate. Kuehua's parents were also very happy. Just invested a lot of money in him to start a business. Lai Zhanping was extremely happy. Money was made in a day. He also gave him a child. A few years later, Lai Zhanping became wealthy thanks to his business acumen. Lai Zhanping was very satisfied with this. He thought that marrying a beautiful wife would mean he wouldn't look at other women. But unexpectedly, his female secretary could switch between black stockings and fishnets. So in the end, he still couldn't control himself. One day, Lai Zhanping is chatting about life with his female secretary. At that moment, Kuehua suddenly burst in. At that moment, he rushed towards Lai Zhanping. Lai Zhanping actually still loves Kuehua very much. So he doesn't actually want to divorce Kuehua. He simply couldn't control himself. He hugged Kuehua, hoping to seek her forgiveness. I didn't expect him to hug Kuehua. Kuehua's body trembled suddenly. It turns out there was a wallpaper cutter on Lai Zhanping's desk. The blade points outward. Just happened to gut Kuehua. But fortunately, Kuehua was not in any life-threatening danger. After being discharged from the hospital, I also forgave Lai Zhanping, still fighting for him to become a gem. Lai Zhanping said that his Lu Ban book vanished into thin air after he used it to attract peach blossoms just once. He originally wanted to play something more thrilling, but no matter how hard he looked, he couldn't find it. He once went to that ghost market to look for that old man, but that old man seemed to have vanished from the earth. He asked others, but no one knew either. Lai Zhanping said this is because he only spent 50 cents back then. So I only bought one spell. He also deeply regrets it. If I had known, I would have bought a few more back then. Chapter 5. Cheng Tuo has this function too. As the saying goes, a small object can bear a heavy weight. Even ordinary malevolent entities can be suppressed by it. I remember when I was young, my neighbors Lai Zhanping and his wife often fought. I also loved to peek over the wall. His wife is notoriously known as a shrew in the village. Another one who's afraid of his wife. Every time, I can only hide at a friend's house. But his wife couldn't find him. They would sit at the front door, crying and cursing. Every time, it attracts the neighbors to come out and watch the commotion. He doesn't mind looking foolish. A scolding over a runny nose lasts for quite a while. One time, the grandmother simply couldn't listen anymore. Just come out and persuade him. But he started scolding his mother-in-law as well. In the evening, Lai Zhanping returned home. But the daughter-in-law still persisted and caused a scene until late at night. The next morning, the two started arguing again. Lai Zhanping was also anxious. He just gave his wife a slap. His wife grabbed a kitchen knife and was about to chop him. He ran out in a panic, stumbling and rolling. His wife chased after him, brandishing a kitchen knife, cursing on the street. "Do you dare to hit me? I wish your whole family a terrible fate." But strangely, that night, There was no sound of their quarrel. It wasn't until breakfast the next day that I learned something had happened at Lai Zhangping's house. His wife hanged herself. As soon as I stepped outside, Lai Zhangping's house is already surrounded by people. Everyone is here to watch the excitement. I was also curious and sneaked into the room among the crowd. But as soon as I entered the room, I regretted it. The scene before me almost scared the pants off me. Lai Zhangping didn't go home that night. After he heard the news, he hurried home to start arranging for his wife's burial. Liu Lao, the host of Beishi, said, "According to customs, one should suspend official duties for 3 days. Lai Zhangping wanted to bury his wife the same day. Liu Lao also gets things done with money. Call the undertaker to take the coffin to the graveyard. Just left the village not far." Then they heard a banging sound coming from the coffin. Startled, a few people hurriedly placed the coffin on the ground. Everyone suspected that the person in the coffin had come back to life. Liu Lao often handles funerals. I have encountered instances of people who seemed to be dead but then came back to life. So they hurriedly had someone open the coffin lid. Let's see if the person has come back to life. The moment the coffin lid is opened, everyone was scared stiff. Ying Shu has taken over the comments section. Dog Head or AIT is an honest and respectable person. The person in the coffin may not be on fire, but still with eyes wide open. The sight of hands reaching up is extremely terrifying. Liu Lao saw this. Quickly asked Dog Saint to hurry back to the village to find a complement. Lai Zhangping was also quite frightened, tremblingly asking Liu Lao if he can handle it. Liu Lao didn't respond. Instead, I asked him, how did his wife really die? Lai Zhangping insisted that his wife had hung herself out of despair. As soon as the voice fell, the coffin that was just sealed started to bang with a thud. At that moment, the dog saint child also returned with the robe. Liu Lao muttered a couple of phrases. Place the lining in the coffin. Though small, it can bear 1,000 pounds. Even ordinary shoes can crush it. As expected, once the shroud was placed, there was no more movement in the coffin. Liu Lao was afraid something else might happen. Let's hurry up and bury the coffin. But during Lai Zhangping's wife's burial, Liu Lao noticed a slight smile at the corner of Lai Zhangping's mouth. Liu Lao warned him, if your wife didn't hang herself last month, they will definitely come back to find you. Be careful. But the very next morning, Old Mother discovered Lai Zhangping hanging in the room. Some say it was done by his wife. Some say they have a deep bond. Lai Zhangping was unwilling to live alone and went to find his wife. Regardless of how it's said, in the end, it was pitiful for his lonely and helpless old mother. Episode 6. Grandmother's Story. The wedding procession looks very grand, but they all have no feet. Yet the destination turned out to be a mass grave. Even stranger is that there's a group of mob bosses frantically digging a grave. The level of strangeness in this story may exceed your understanding. Timid friends, please crouch in the bathroom and watch slowly. When I was young, my mom often takes me to visit my great-aunt in the neighboring village. Because my great-uncle passed away early, Aunt Lai is very nostalgic about him. Bayan always talks about the stories of her great-uncle when he was young. One time, he shared the story of when he married his great-aunt's husband. Aunt Leala was also a well-known beauty in the nearby village when she was young. At that time, marriage still relied on the orders of parents and the words of matchmakers. When the time comes, there will be many suitors who come to propose. Although Aunt's uncle is from the neighboring village, but still considered a handsome talent. The family is considered wealthy in the village. Therefore, as soon as the matchmaker arrived, Auntie's father agreed. But due to the distance between the two villages, Auntie Lealau met Uncle Leai for the first time on their engagement day. It must truly be a match made in heaven. The two fell in love at first sight. From then on, Uncle Ye often rode for half a day to come to our village. At that time, bandits still frequently roamed the mountains. It is very unsafe for a person to go out alone, but this still couldn't dampen Uncle's enthusiasm. Just to see my great-aunt once and give her something, then hurry back before the sun sets. One day the great-uncle came to visit the great-aunt. But before leaving, Aunt Li's husband shoved a gold hairpin into Aunt Li's hand. At that time everyone was very poor. Ordinary families have never seen anything made of gold. I heard my great-uncle say that he has saved his private stash of money for many years. All were exchanged for this golden hairpin. Auntie was very touched after hearing this. The gold hairpin is carved with great surprise. It looks like an ancient style. So I Lealau is extremely fond of the golden hairpin. But I can't bear to take it off. Just wrap it in red cloth. I found a wooden box to store it. The day of the wedding arrived. Auntie held the wooden box close to her chest as she got into the sedan chair. The eldest uncle of my maternal great-aunt is in charge of escorting the bride, invited Sona and the drummer. The journey was lively with all the sounds and commotion. But at that time the world was unstable. On their wedding day they encountered bandits. Aunt heard a commotion outside the flower sedan chair. Just wanted to take a closer look. But he heard his brother outside the sedan chair telling him not to come out. Auntie was feeling a bit restless and uneasy. So he took the box containing the gold hairpin, hidden under the cushion of the sedan chair, waiting left and right. It's been noisy outside with no conclusion in sight. Aunt couldn't hold back. Just lifted a corner of the curtain to take a look. Only 3 or 4 young men got into a scuffle with the wedding procession. But due to the significant difference in numbers, our people still hold the upper hand. Beat those bandits to the point where they couldn't fight back at all. Seeing this, Auntie let out a long sigh and then lowered the curtain. As expected, soon the sedan chair was lifted up. But Auntie wants to know if her brother is hurt. Just asked loudly. But there was no echo heard, only the sound of the suona. And this suona is not played joyfully. Instead, it felt mournful, like a mourner at a funeral. So Auntie lifted the curtain to take a look again. But I found that the person carrying the sedan chair was wearing a dirty red robe, wearing a strange hat on his head. It's not even the attire of a sedan chair bearer hired by our own family. What's even scarier is, this person is surprisingly barefoot under the red robe. At that moment, the sedan chair bearer turned his head back. The pale face looked just like a dead person. Auntie screamed in fright. But those ghostly bearers seemed to be deaf and blind. Continue carrying the sedan chair forward. Auntie couldn't care about anything else at that moment. Suddenly she lifted the curtain and jumped out of the carriage. But unfortunately it just happened to hit a rock. The head instantly started to bleed. But at that moment Aunt was too overwhelmed to shout in pain. He rolled and crawled into the nearby bushes to hide. After running a couple of steps, she suddenly remembered. My own golden list is still in the sedan chair. So I turned back to look, but found that it was actually a long queue. All the ghosts wore the same red robes. In front of the sedan chair, there was a horn player and a drummer. There are still people carrying gifts behind. If it weren't for the tattered clothes, the dusty face, and the lack of feet, it looks just like a grand family sending off their bride. What's even stranger is, The noise from jumping out of the sedan chair was quite loud. It seemed that not a single ghost noticed the bride had escaped, but continued to escort the bride. Aunt Lai understood that keeping her life safe was the most important thing. But in my heart, I couldn't bear to part with that gold list. So they secretly followed behind the ghostly group. After walking with the group for about half an hour, the bearers finally stopped the sedan chair. But the place where they stopped turned out to be a mass grave. There are two mounds of various sizes all around. After the sedan chair was put down, all the ghosts gathered in one place, then crazily digging a grave. Before long, a coffin was unearthed. Aunt Lai was hiding behind the tree, watching them take away my gold-filled box helplessly, place it in the coffin, and bury it well. Then these ghosts acted as if they were performing some mysterious ritual. We bowed 3 times to that grave and then suddenly vanished. Auntie wants to retrieve the gold bracelet, but I was also terrified. In the end, I decided to find my family first, so I stumbled and ran back. Before long, she ran into her brother who was looking for her. Auntie rushed into her elder brother's arms and started crying about what had just happened. Later, aunt and brother pondered over it. It seems those ghosts originally wanted the Jinzinzi, so they decided to carry the palanquin back from the mountain. Aunt Key and the wedding party searched the mountain for a long time. But no matter what, I couldn't find that potter's field anymore, so they had no choice but to return home. After returning home, the wedding didn't take place, so they chose another auspicious day to hold the wedding again. After getting married, Aunt took Aunt to visit the elders in the village. One of them was the last scholar. After hearing his great-aunt's strange experience, it is recorded that there was a village. In ancient times, iron was produced in the surrounding mountains. Therefore, this area was granted to a small king. Later, as the iron ore was depleted, the Wand family of Wand has also fallen into decline. Thus, the villages in this area also fell behind and became isolated. The chaotic burial ground that Aunt Lai saw, I'm afraid it's the grandfather of this family. But that golden hairpin was originally a burial item belonging to someone else. It was stolen by tomb raiders. The old scholar consoled Auntie. Consider it a lesson learned at the cost of money. It's better for the belongings to return to their rightful owner than to be haunted by a cursed hairpin that brings disaster. Episode 7. The girl asked me to do her makeup. My name is a lion. She is a mortuary makeup artist. After work that day, a strange woman actually asked me to help her with her makeup. She said she is getting married, but I have no money on me. But I also want to show my best side to my boyfriend. That's why I came to the funeral home for help. I hope I can help. My heart softened, and I agreed to her. She took the makeup case and went out. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of the nightmare. We took a winding route all the way. Gradually, the sky darkened. Not knowing how long I had been walking, finally arrived at a Ling's home. Their home is on the mountain. She was the only one in this room. It appeared exceedingly desolate. A Ling, while watching the door, said with deep regret, "I'm really sorry. My home is somewhat remote. It's taken you such a long time to leave." I hurriedly told her it was okay. It's getting late. Let's get started. Only after entering the house did I realize. There is basically no furniture in this house. You could say the house is bare. I first smile and wish her a happy marriage. Then she opened the makeup box she had brought with her, preparing to do her makeup. But to avoid misunderstandings, I still remind her, these are the tools I usually use for work. You know. Would you mind? A Ling quickly waved her hand and said, I haven't had a chance to thank you yet. I don't mind. Seeing that she doesn't mind, I feel relieved. Then began to carefully apply makeup on Ling. I said with a smile, I will definitely make you beautiful. But while applying makeup, I still felt Ling's restraint. So I started looking for topics to talk about. I want her face to relax. Otherwise, putting on makeup will become somewhat difficult. But just at that moment, a scar at the collar of Ling caught my attention. I have been working as a funeral director for over a year now. I am very familiar with what these scars are. Suddenly, fine beads of sweat. It just popped out from my forehead. I never expected to encounter this. Such a terrifying thing, because in the past, makeup was applied only to the dead. They are all motionless. But this time it actually moved, and it can also talk. I strive to calm my emotions, and Ling saw that I had stopped. He asked me what was wrong. Hearing Ling's question, I quickly adjusted my mindset. Although I felt very scared, but she can't know. I uncovered her identity. Otherwise, I have no idea what the consequences will be. I forced myself to say it was nothing, then continued to do her makeup. But the fear within, causing my hands to tremble incessantly. At this moment, Ling also noticed my nervousness. She said, "Don't be afraid. I won't hurt you," although hearing her say this. But I didn't dare to respond. The work in my hands gradually came to a halt. I quietly watched her. Ling followed my gaze. I understand I see the failures on her. So they asked me if I had seen it. I didn't know how to respond at that moment. Could only gently nod. That counts as answering her question. Even Ling's smile gradually disappeared. She asked with a blank expression, "I want to hear a story." I had no choice but to nod again. Ling saw that I was willing to listen to her tell stories. Tears instantly streamed down. She said she really wants to marry him. It turns out that Ling has a boyfriend named Yang. The two had been together for 5 or 6 years. Even prepared to reconcile with the strong-willed family. Let's talk about marriage. But such strong parents, after learning that Ling is an orphan, absolutely refuse to agree to their marriage. Yet the filial and strong-willed always remains silent. He did not choose to strive for love. Not long after, Paeki ended his relationship with Ling due to family pressure. He chose to listen to his parents, go on a blind date with a girl from a well-off family. Moreover, his job has already been arranged for him. In the eyes of Yang, you can find another partner, but the parents only have one child. No matter how hard Ling tried to persuade and plead, how Kang ultimately left. Only a cold, indifferent silhouette was left for Ling. That moment, Ling felt that the whole world had abandoned her. She slowly walked up the mountain with her weary legs, standing at the edge of the cliff, looking at the distant scenery, but just thinking about how strong. Her tears fell uncontrollably again. She didn't understand why she was so harsh on him. So Ling stood for a while and then chose to jump down. She felt too tired. It's so bitter. No family ties, no love. In her view, she felt completely unnecessary in this world. Living has lost its meaning. I heard this. I can't help but feel that Ling is truly pitiful. Tears flowed down unconsciously. I couldn't help but sigh at how hard she has lived. Ling heard my words of sympathy for her. Suddenly, he stood up abruptly. The emotions instantly spiraled out of control, turning into rage. I saw maggots crawling around incessantly. I was taken aback all at once. She said fiercely, "I don't need your sympathy. Tomorrow I will marry her, whether she and her family are willing or not." I looked at the terrifying Ling. Everyone is retreating in fear, leaning against the corner, trembling uncontrollably. But Ling continued to shout. A Kang is actually going to marry another woman. How can this be? She will definitely not let this happen. She can only marry him. I silently shed tears with my eyes closed. I don't dare to look at her anymore. I can tell from her voice. Her heart was full of anger and resentment. Suddenly, the surroundings fell silent again. I paused for a moment and secretly opened my eyes. I kept praying in my heart for her to leave quickly, but as soon as I opened my eyes, I regretted it. And there stood a Ling right in front of me. I could even smell the foul odor coming from her mouth. I want to throw up, but she held it back. She stared into my eyes and said, "Do you also think that I am wrong?" Looking at a Ling's face so close and filled with intensity. I quickly followed her lead and repeatedly spoke up to defend her. But in my heart, I was thinking about how to escape from here quickly. A Ling smiled happily after hearing my words, although it still looks terrifying. But it made my heart feel a little lighter. I thought a Ling would disappear after she heard what I said. But I was wrong. She realized I said that out of fear. She tightly gripped my neck, spoke loudly. "You're only saying that because you're scared of me, right? You are all liars. You will all have a terrible fate." As she spoke, her hand around my neck tightened. It made me feel like I was going to suffocate. Just when I thought I was doomed, a Ling unexpectedly let go of her hand. She made a request to me. He said if he couldn't paint her beautifully, "She's going to kill me." I quickly nodded in agreement to her. Then a Ling returned to her original appearance, but I can only endure the pain in my neck. She began to apply makeup to mask her inner fears. After finishing the makeup, a Ling smiled happily at her reflection in the mirror. She happily thanked me and said she was very satisfied. And at that moment, I suddenly feel that a Ling is really beautiful. Just as I was about to beg her to let me go, a Ling suddenly blew a breath towards me. In an instant, I collapsed to the ground and lost consciousness. When I woke up again, it was already morning. I sat up and looked around at my surroundings. I just realized I actually slept in the morgue for a whole night. And on the bed beside it, there was a corpse. The body bag has also been unzipped. I slowly approached to look into the body bag. Suddenly, my face turned pale, because it contains no one else. It is a Ling, and her face was already made up. This suddenly reminds me of last night's experience. The fear in my heart surged once again. I can't care about anything else. He opened the door of the morgue and ran outside. I quickly left the workplace after being startled. I asked for leave from my boss as soon as I got home, so I rested at home for a day. Just as I was contemplating whether to change jobs, the evening news on television caught my attention. The news said today at noon, a groom named Hye Kyang. On the day of the wedding, he smashed the bride with a wine bottle. Then he jumped off the building and committed suicide. I quickly turned off the TV after seeing this. The next day, I submitted my resignation to my supervisor. Bye, Bohua. Be careful driving at night. Have you heard about the shocking nationwide ghost guiding incident? A man got lost while driving at midnight. Suddenly, a few strange people appeared and pointed the way for him. I don't want to go in this direction, but almost lost my life. The level of strangeness may exceed your imagination. Suggest to invite your friends to watch together. The event took place in Kangding City, Sichuan in 2013. Lai Zhongbing just finished a deal with a client. Just bought a little white rabbit at the pet store. Preparing a birthday gift for my son. Maybe when I grow up, I can eat meat again. because it's not too far from home. Lai Zhongping decided to rush back overnight, and that little white rabbit was placed in the passenger seat. Those who have never been to Kangding might not know. Most of them are winding mountain roads built in the hills. If someone has just arrived here, driving at night is still relatively dangerous. But for an experienced driver like Lai Zhongping, it's simply too easy. But at that moment, a thick fog suddenly rose ahead. Visibility suddenly dropped to just a few meters. Lai Zhongping had no choice but to slow down, drive forward cautiously. But even so, he still unknowingly lost his way, just as Lai Zhongping was at a loss. Suddenly, a few people appeared ahead, and they were gathered together around him. I don't know what they are talking about. Lai Zhongping saw this and didn't think much of it, directly speaking to the nearest elder. "Old man, how do I get out of this path?" But he shouted several times. The old man had no reaction at all. Lai Zhongping thought that the old man was somewhat hard of hearing. He got out of the car and patted him on the shoulder. "I don't want this shot." The group all turned around. Her face was still full of smiles, but it gives off an indescribable airiness. Lai Zhongping felt that something was off, but I quickly asked for directions. Just as the words fell, the three of them pointed in the same direction. It seems very familiar here, completely without thought. Such a bizarre scene. Lai Zhongping felt a sense of alertness arise within him, because I heard from the older generation. A few years ago, there were still highway robbery incidents around here, specifically committing crimes in such remote places. After dealing with those few people, Lai Zhongping hurriedly glanced at the rearview mirror. They found that those few people were still standing in place. There was no other action. This made Lai Zhongping breathe a little easier, then slowly headed towards the direction pointed out by those people. This is a standard mountain road. One side of the road is a mountain wall. On the other side is a cliff. He drove on this small road for over 10 minutes. But I didn't see an exit. Just when Lai Zhongping felt a bit strange, suddenly a rock fell in front. Immediately after that, another larger stone has fallen. Seeing this scene, Lai Zhongping immediately thought of the landslide. He hurriedly hung up and wanted to retreat. But the next second, a loud noise suddenly came from the mountain. Lai Zhongping looked up. My heart sank right then and there. It was a boulder larger than a truck. Honestly, I threw it straight at him. A few seconds later, the boulder struck the truck. Fortunately, the driver's seat and the car door formed an angle. He wasn't directly hit. After exhausting all my strength, fortunately crawled out from inside. But when he turned back to look, but was so scared that it sent shivers down their spine. On the other side of the passenger seat, directly smashed into a steel disc, and the little white rabbit inside has turned into minced meat. If that giant rock shifts a little, Lai Zhongping will definitely be like that rabbit. Later, he heard that the road had long been abandoned. Yet every year cars drive in. It's as if there is some kind of curse. And Lai Zhongping was able to survive. It might just be that the rabbit sealed its fate. Episode 9. Just joking if it's a bet. Girls should be cautious when being bridesmaids, because they will be teased in various ways. Some may even suffer from humiliation, ultimately led to a tragedy. This is a true event that I personally experienced. This day is the grand wedding day of Chen Liang in our village. According to the village customs, still want to make a fuss during the wedding night, because the bride is also from the neighboring village. So her few close friends didn't rush to leave either. I also want to join in the excitement. However, as the men kept drinking more and more, He began to mischievously make moves on the bridesmaid, and the men are getting more and more creative with their tricks. The actions assigned to the bridesmaids became increasingly embarrassing. Just when the men were having a great time, suddenly I saw the bridesmaid Zio Lan running out of the bedroom in tears. She appeared with disheveled hair and disheveled clothing, ran out the door with a face full of indignation, just as everyone was confused and unaware of what was happening. Only the best man, Ergu, was seen holding up his pants. Slowly walked out of the bedroom. It turned out that Ergu took advantage of everyone's inattention. Using alcohol, he pulled Zio Lan into the space between the bedroom walls. The bride, furious, pointed at Ergu's nose and started to curse. "You beast." However, Ergu did not think so. Instead, they complained that Zio Lan couldn't afford to play. "The bride is not in the mood to argue with him now. It's more important to go out and find my best friend." But my best friend has already disappeared without a trace. Suddenly, the bride had a foreboding feeling in her heart. "After all, today is a day of great joy for myself. We must not let anything go wrong." Chen Liang stopped the bride, who was about to continue her anger. "Let's split up and find the person first." At this moment, the other men also began to feel scared, because they also realized the seriousness of the situation. If things get out of hand, they all can't escape the consequences. After everyone had been searching hard for more than an hour, still saw the result I least wanted to see. They found Zio Lan at the east end of the village. However, it left everyone speechless. Zio Lan was only wearing her underwear, already hanged on the big tree. Seeing this situation, Ergu, the instigator, immediately broke out in a cold sweat. "Now I'm completely confused." He looked at the little Lan in the tree. Suddenly, the tongue stretched out like an old intestine. Their eyes were fixed intensely on themselves. His eyes were still filled with endless hatred. But all of this was caused by his own hands. Then Ergu was taken away. What infuriated everyone was, his dad used connections to maneuver. Ergu was released after just 2 days. However, how can the heavens allow evil people to roam freely? On the night he was released home, indeed, retribution has come, because Ergu did such shameless things. His wife is unwilling to continue living with him, crying and fussing about wanting a divorce. At this moment, Ergu still did not realize his mistakes. Agreed impatiently with his wife. After waking up, I went to handle the divorce procedures. However, what he didn't expect was, his wife suddenly clasped her hands on her head. My whole body started to tremble uncontrollably. Immediately, it felt as if they had become a different person. The tongue stretches out like an old intestine. The fierce face stared intently at Ergu on the bed. Ergu suddenly had a bad premonition. Chills ran down my spine, and my hair stood on end. When he turned around and saw his wife's face, suddenly it felt like falling into an ice cave, because at this moment the face of my wife in front of me, it was exactly the same as when Zio Lan hanged herself. He let out a painful howl. Ergu's parents heard the noise, hastily rushed over from the next room. Pushing the door open, my head suddenly buzzed. I saw my son and daughter-in-law lying in a pool of blood. The daughter-in-law held a blood-stained dagger. The son was covered in wounds. What's even more cruel is that he was castrated. The elderly couple's hearts ached with pain. Hastily sent the son to the hospital. However, Ergu's injuries were too severe. He's been dead for a long time. The elderly couple is heartbroken over the loss of their son in middle age. However, on the day of the funeral, unexpectedly, the entire village came to watch the excitement. Not a single one came to help. Ergu's parents couldn't bear the blow. Just completely lost it. Searching for my son all day in the village. Urgu's wife also went mad for a while, but after staying in the mental hospital for a while, I came out. Nor were they sentenced. Because of a vulgar wedding disturbance, completely destroyed two well-functioning families. Chapter 10. This is truly a blessing from my ancestors. The woman said that her chickens can climb trees. Dogs can climb onto rooftops. So they arrived at the home of the woman Lai Shizhen. As soon as I entered, it was like a chicken on a tree. The dog is on the roof. In this situation, there are two possibilities. One type is a natural disaster. One is a man-made disaster. Xiao Fei got straight to the point. I directly asked Lai Shizhen what unusual things had happened at home. Lai Shizhen said there was a problem with his great-grandfather's gravesite. Xiao Fei didn't go into the house either, but first went to the grave of Lai Shizhen's great-grandfather. Along the way, Xiao Fei occasionally glanced at the sides. Everything is fine. Lai Shizhen's great-grandfather was buried on a hillside. Xiao Fei looked up and was taken aback. Both the grave and the tombstone had large cracks. What's stranger is that there is only one grave in that place. Buried in the gloom. Xiao Fei asked why there was only one grave. Where are the others in the family buried? The woman said there is another ancestral grave at their home. His great-grandfather was astonishingly buried here back in the day. It was only after asking that I learned someone deliberately damaged the grave back then. Buried the person there. Lai Shizhen looked at Xiao Fei's serious expression. They also know that things are not simple. Xiao Fei said he will show disrespect to your great-grandfather. Then he paid his respects and approached the grave, leaning down to look into the crack. There are many animal hairs and bloodstains all around. On both sides of the grave there is a 1-meter wide strip running from south to north. The withering of the plants contrasts sharply with the surrounding vegetation's growth. It is undoubtedly gloomy, and the people buried there, when the time comes, it will turn into a zombie, emerging from the grave to bring disaster to the region. And he said that his great-grandfather was buried in the gloom. It's almost time to rise as a zombie. Now the grave has cracked open. There's no absolute certainty that Xiao Fei can be defeated. After returning to Lai Shizhen's home, Xiao Fei asked Lai Shizhen to invite the elders from the family over, because some things need to be clarified with old Master Lai. When Lai Shizhen's great-grandfather died, his father is not very old. There are many things I am unaware of, so I can only ask his grandfather. Old Master Lai recalled the events that took place when his father passed away. After the death of old Lady Lai, the body was sealed. A spirit altar was set up at home to hold the funeral, but just on the second day of the suspension of duties, a Taoist priest came to the house. Old Master Lai thought they were here to demand money. The Taoist said that the old man Lai in the coffin was possessed by an evil spirit. If we don't get rid of it, the descendants of the Lai family will face disaster. Old Master Lai became anxious upon hearing this. Immediately drive him out. The Taoist pushed aside old Master Lai and walked over to the coffin. With a flick of the chant, the dust on the coffin was swept away. Thin wisps of black smoke began to rise from the coffin lid. A ghostly face formed in the black mist hanging in the air. Everyone present was quite scared. The Taoist once again formed a seal and chanted a spell. With a wave of his arm, the black mist was drawn into the sleeve. The Lai family believed his words, to be responsible for future generations. Grandpa Lai was buried at the cemetery site chosen by the Taoist priest. Nothing significant has happened over the decades. Until recently, the Lai family's ancestors were in business. That person was probably hired by a business rival to harm his family. But those things no longer matter. What matters now is how to prevent the situation from becoming a stalemate with elder Lai. Xiao Fei instructed the Lai family members to handle the necessary tasks. That is to prepare several pieces of yellow cloth, kill 99 hens to collect blood, call back all the descendants that can be called back, waited at the Lai family until evening. I think the time is about right. But up, and urged Yiling not to despair. I've never encountered anything like this before. Yiling felt a bit worried. Xiao Fei pretended to be nonchalant. Actually, she wasn't completely sure in her heart. Leading the Lai family to the graveyard. First, they surrounded the grave mound with bamboo poles. Then they wrapped the entire grave mound with cloth. Again, a thick wooden stake was buried in the cloth enclosure. Once everything is settled, Xiao Fei had the Lai family, young and old, take refuge in a town he set up for their safety. Xiao Fei then burrowed into the fabric enclosure, then took out a pen to write on the pearl gauze. He began to write runes on the cloth while performing his techniques. The brush strokes filled the fabric enclosure, silently reciting in my heart, "The person who gave a thumbs up has not lost their luck." The comment section is protected by a dog head. He lifted the bucket filled with congealed blood and poured it onto the grave. Xiao Fei did this to wake up the Lai family's old master in advance. Even if a vow is made, it can still be dealt with. The cracks filled with grave mounds. Bubbles started to rise with a gurgling sound as I peed. A shriveled shoe suddenly stretched out. Xiao Fei realized it. Withdrawing, he drew out the belly corpse lock. Old Master Lai suddenly jumped out of the grave. It landed in front of Xiao Fei and sniffed. As soon as he opened his mouth, sharp fangs were revealed. Xiao Fei saw Old Master Lai was about to pounce. At the moment of retreating, he swung the belly lock. While dodging, he circled around Old Lady Lai. After a few rounds, Lai Laitei's arms were bound. Xiao Fei wanted to tie Old Lady Lai to the stake. I never expected that Old Man Lai had such great strength. Almost broke free from the corpse lock. I want to jump out of the enclosure. Fortunately, the height of the fence was exactly at the limit of the zombie's jump. Old Lady Lai was blocked by a cloth barrier, and the runes on the cloth emitted a golden light. Old Master Lai was pushed back. Xiao Fei took the opportunity to throw out the belly corpse lock, wrapped around Old Master Lai's neck. At this moment, Old Man Lai had not fully turned into a zombie yet, just wanted to break free from the constraints. So he gathered his strength and jumped again. The corpse was pulled tight towards the front. Lada's mouth was covered in blood. Old Lady Lai desperately tried to break through the cloth barrier. The fabric is about to tear apart. Xiao Fei hurriedly called out to the Lai family outside. Bow to Old Master Lai. The Lai family saw the immortal rise from afar. I was already scared out of my wits. Hearing Xiao Fei shout, they knelt down in unison, shouting Old Master Lai. The call of his descendants made Old Master Lai act. Slowly became infatuated. Xiao Fei seized the opportunity. They bound Old Lady Lai with a knot of stones. Then he pulled hard around the wooden stake. Old Lady Lai was pulled onto the wooden stake. Xiao Fei then circled around 2 more times. They tied up Old Man Lai in a knot. Old Lady Lai struggled desperately. The wooden stake swayed back and forth, almost pulled out from the ground. Seeing this, Xiao Fei quickly took out a corpse-restraining talisman, cut off thoughts and intentions, urgently as commanded. May those who give likes find peace. The comments section serves as a shield. Then it landed on the head of Elder Lai. Old Lady Lai finally stopped. Xiao Fei gasped for breath. Once again, a foraging circle was drawn around. After everything was settled, Zio face sat down on the ground, exhausted. After resting for a moment, he got up and approached the Lai family. Let the elderly and the young who find it inconvenient go home first. Lai Shizhen's father is extremely impressed by Zio Fei at this moment, fearing that there might be other variables. What should we do next? Zio Fei said they could only wait until dawn to disperse the morale. Just rebury the ancestral grave properly. His father asked if he could find the person who harmed him. After all, someone has been scheming against you for decades. Everyone is afraid of brother. According to Zio Fei's analysis, the Lai family wanted any trouble now. Old Master Lai is the root of trouble buried decades ago. The one who cast the spell is likely long gone from this world. And now they are just an ordinary family. No one would want to harm them. The grievances of our ancestors are probably long resolved. Waited until the sun rose. The sunlight shone on Old Lady Lai. A wave of dark energy rose. It was sunny until noon. Old Lady Lai no longer had black gas emanating from her body. Zio Fei then called it the coffin that the Lai family had carefully prepared. Rebury Old Master Lai. Then he took out the coffee grinder. Lying haphazardly on the coffin, tangled several lines. Another layer of black cloth was added. This is what made the Lai family move the ancestral grave for reburial. The Lai family has left. Zio Fei did not leave. He scrutinized the dark vein. I figured it out. So that there won't be more goods produced in the future. But I simply don't have that ability. This made him lament his lack of skill in his craft. A tale of history. This girl is getting uglier and uglier. This girl has been beautiful since she was little, but it gradually went off course since middle school. By high school, I became even uglier. It's as if they've become a completely different person. Even as an adult, she often scared passers-by. She has no idea why she has become this way. Did I forget to like the video myself? Everyone hurry up and approach your beautiful friend. Or leave the dog head to guard the ladder and hide in the safe house. That day, she arrived at a famous fortune-telling parlor. Embrace a mindset of common sense. I shared my long-standing questions with the fortune-teller. He even showed her photos from elementary school. The fortune-teller saw that the girl in the photo was indeed very beautiful. But with this appearance, no matter how long it takes in the future, it shouldn't have turned out looking like a pig now. The girl shed tears in pain. Her parents are both very good-looking people. Now everyone doubts that I'm not my parents' biological child. But if they aren't biological, why was I so cute when I was a child? Soon the diviner noticed a clue. Pointing at the girl at the edge, he said, "This person's appearance is very similar to yours now. The same garlic nose, the same thick lips, the same wide chin." The girl immediately remembered. She is her elementary school classmate, Jayaki. Why does she look so much like me now? The diviner quickly understood everything. She told the girl that in this world there is a special constitution known as the Hua body. Will change the bodies and appearances of those who get close to her. Subtly reversed. This ability can only be used once in a lifetime, and it must take effect in childhood. The girl remembers that time. Every day I play with Jayaki. At that time, she had a withdrawn personality and didn't like to talk. But they are always very good to themselves. It turns out they had swapped bodies at that time. The girl was very anxious after learning the truth. Years of suffering caused her to start losing her sanity. Immediately ask the diviner to teach her the method to break the spell. A few days later, the girl found Jayaki. I saw Jayaki get out of her rich and handsome boyfriend's sports car. She was very angry and jealous. This time I must take revenge on Jayaki and reclaim the body. She followed Jayaki to a deserted alley, preparing to launch a sneak attack from behind. The result was discovered by Jayaki. Suddenly dodged the attack. Jayaki is very scared because she didn't know the woman in front of her at all. But the woman was able to call out her own name. The girl is in great pain. Jayaki actually couldn't recognize her own appearance. Clearly it was you, this monster, who changed my appearance. I was very beautiful when I was young, but it grew uglier and uglier. Yet you are growing more and more beautiful. Endured so many years of grievances and pain. No one ever cared about my feelings. It's all your fault. Secretly swapped our bodies. Jayaki is very shocked, but she said she didn't know why either. Mingaming was very ugly when he was little. She is becoming more and more beautiful, and my life hasn't become happier because of it. When I first became another person, her family was also surprised by her changes. Buy her the most beautiful clothes. Give her the best meals. From now on, all household chores will be unnecessary. But after all, the family is poor. After growing up, due to her beauty, just thought it would be possible to pursue material life, although many suitors would spend a lot of money on her. But when she gave her heart, she just realized she was wrong. Those men only love their own beauty. Myself, deeply hurt by emotional wounds. From now on, no longer rejecting the pursuit of wealthy individuals. Apart from beauty, I have nothing else. I don't know how many times. Being scolded for being shameless. I don't know how many times. Being laughed at by colleagues. She is not happy at all now. Seeing the tragic Jayaki, the girl began to feel compassion. Instead, I felt sympathy for her predicament. So I quietly chose to leave. Compared to my current self, I am happier than her, because she is just a beautiful shell. The soul is a pitiful being controlled by money. But after Jayaki returned home, her mother welcomed her back with a fine red wine. Father took out his phone. Let her see the baby that her sister just gave birth to. It's just like when you were just born. Jayaki glanced at the photo. It really is. But to be honest, you should be uglier than me. I hope she can be like me when she grows up. Find the most beautiful classmate to befriend. This is a strange story that took place in Shandong. 3 men hurry home through the heavy snow. On the way, I unexpectedly encountered the spirit of the dead roasting by the fire. The 3 unsuspecting people gathered closer after seeing. I'd almost lost my life there. The level of strangeness may exceed your imagination. Suggest to invite your friends to watch together. The story begins in the 1980s. Lai Zhangping, who was working in Beijing at the time, returning to his hometown for the new year with his 2 childhood friends. Transportation was very inconvenient at that time. After getting off the bus, there is still a long stretch of mountain road to walk. Lai Zhangping rushed to get home before dark, so they decided to take the shortcut. The 2 childhood friends didn't refuse after listening. After all, I used to take the small paths often, but the 3 just walked in. There is a particularly oppressive feeling. It feels like someone is watching me. Moreover, the temperature has dropped significantly. The 3 of them trembled in fear. It used to take just 10 minutes to get out of the forest. But today, I don't know what's going on. Just when a few people felt something was off, Lai Zhangping, who was at the front, suddenly stopped. Old Wang, old Shang, hurry and look at the ground. The 2 of them felt somewhat baffled. But still I glanced down at the ground, directly onto the snow in front. There were actually footprints from 3 people. It is exactly what they just left behind. It's clear that the three of them are lost. Zheng keeps spinning in the forest. Old Wan was not happy about this. They began to blame Lai Zhangping for taking the wrong path. On the other side, old Zhang was also feeling a bit anxious. If we don't leave the forest soon, it is very likely to freeze to death. After the three discussed among themselves, decide to walk in only one direction. No matter where I go, I can find a place to stay for a night. It's better than freezing to death in the woods. After walking for about 10 minutes, Lao Wang stopped again. He pointed in one direction and asked the two to look. When the two looked over, suddenly I found a glimmer of fire not far away. Now all three of them are energized. Without caring about what was over there, they hurried over. Before long, the three of them arrived at the blaze. Only 5 or 6 men were gathered around roasting marshmallows. Lao Wan was already extremely cold, hastily walked over to warm by the fire, although those people looked somewhat displeased. However, she appeared very enthusiastic. He agreed to Lao Wang's request readily. Just like that, the three of them also gathered around the campfire. But strangely, the three of them didn't feel a bit hot. Instead, it feels increasingly cold. It feels as if all the warmth inside my body has been drained away. The bonfire appeared to be very large. However, there was not a hint of warmth, and no one has added new wood in such a long time. Yet it can always maintain the same intensity. Even the snowflakes seem to not melt when they fall onto the fire. Lai Zhangping felt increasingly uneasy. He looked back at those people again. You could only see the expressions on those people's faces, each one uglier than the last. Lai Zhangping instantly understood upon seeing this. You've encountered a freezing spirit. If a way to escape is not found soon, there is a high possibility of freezing to death right here. Thinking of this, Lai Zhangping asked Lao Wang to call Lao Zhang as soon as old Wan turns around, but found that old Zhang had already fainted. Lao Wang pushed several times, but there was no response at all. Now old Wan is not calm anymore. Start urging Lai Zhangping to come up with a solution. Lai Zhangping thought for a moment. I really thought of a way. He remembered buying a string of firecrackers on the way back. The elders say that ghosts fear firelight and noise. Setting off firecrackers at this time is definitely a disturbance. Lai Zhangping then lit the fuse. With a sudden toss of both hands, threw it directly into the fire. The fuse quickly ignited the cannon. The sound of popping and crackling began incessantly. But those few people didn't dodge at all, as if they didn't see it at all. A few seconds later, a string of firecrackers has finished. Until the smoke clears, those people are actually still sitting in the same place. But when the two of them saw clearly, but was startled to the point of feeling a tingling on the scalp, those people looked more like ghosts than living beings. It was clearly a frozen corpse. The fire in the middle has dwindled to just a few sticks of wood, still completely covered by heavy snow. There was not a single spark of light. The two of them didn't have time to think too much. They lifted the unconscious Lao Zhang and ran off. More than half an hour later, the three finally returned to the village. Lao Zhang slowly woke up, but the left ear was frozen and damaged halfway. Later, the town collected the bodies of those who froze to death. I heard it was a few people in the leather trade. I lost my way in the woods. Chapter 13. Do not be too greedy in life. A man strives to protect his family business. Instead of mourning, they turned their recently deceased son into a little ghost, then buried in front of the door for over 20 years to guard his wealth. It turns out the man's last name is Lai. He is a wealthy merchant known far and wide in the area. People call him Lai Yuanwen. He is now severely ill and has little time left. Before he passed away, he called his only son, Lai Zhangping, to his side. I need to remind him to do something. This story begins over 20 years ago. Before Lai Zhangping, Lai Yuanwen actually has another son. It died just a few days after being born. At that time, a child who died prematurely could not be buried casually. Just throw it directly into the mountain. He personally carried his son's body to the mountain to dispose of it. However, on the way back, but they encountered a person lying in the snow. Perhaps it was due to just having lost her son. Lai Yuanwen suddenly showed kindness and saved that person. The next day, that person woke up. He claims to be a Taoist priest. It was said that Lai Yuanwen's fate was destined to not be able to keep his wealth, but he has a way to help Lai Yuanwen protect his family business. This method is truly shocking. It's just to take advantage of Lai Yuanwen's son having just died to provoke Kai Hanmei, nailed into the skull with iron nails. It is said that one can pin Lai Yuanwen's son's soul inside his body. Then bury Lai Yuanwen's son in front of the gate. Let his son help him watch over the property. Before leaving, the Taoist was still giving instructions to Lai Yuanwen. When he dies, be sure to dig up his son's remains, and after removing the iron nails, give a grand burial, and to be buried together with Lai Yuanwen, to compensate for the suffering he endured over the years. Otherwise, there will be dire consequences. Just like that, over 20 years have passed. Now Lai Yuanwen's time is running out. Before passing away, entrusted this matter to Lai Zhangping. After giving instructions about this matter, Lai Yuanwen died just a few days later. Lai Zhangping stood vigil in front of the mourning hall for 3 days. On the third night, he suddenly remembered his father's entrusted task. Silently sneaked to the front gate. I never expected to actually dig up a child's hole. There is an iron nail above the skull. But looking at the bones before him, he began to entertain crooked thoughts. Because he knows he is not cut out for business. He had always worried about leaving his father's guidance. I will squander the family fortune myself. Now it is discovered that there is a way to preserve family fortune through unscrupulous means. He certainly didn't want to give up. Then they buried the child's remains again. Then they planned to return to the mourning hall to continue the vigil. However, just a few steps away, he heard the sound of hammering. Lai Zhangping felt a bit guilty after having done something wrong, blindly looking around to see if anyone is there. After looking for a long time, I found no one at all. He finally felt relieved. I think I might have tinnitus. So they didn't pay much attention and went back to continue the vigil. But when he wakes up the next day after sleeping, the situation did not improve. Even dizziness and blurred vision occurred. The tinnitus is becoming more and more severe. On the third day, the relatives discovered his situation. I thought he was sad because of his father's death. He comforted him, telling him to learn to grieve and take care of his health. However, at that moment, Lai Zhangping forced himself to stay alert. When chatting with a guest, suddenly a patch of red appeared on the ground at the entrance. Upon closer inspection, it turned out to be the place where the child's bones were buried. A patch of blood stain oozed out. In this moment, Lai Zhangping's face turned pale. He stood frozen in place. The guests noticed a sudden change in his expression, quickly asked him what was wrong. Lai Zhangping finally came to his senses, looked again at the clean ground. There was nothing. So they breathed a sigh of relief for the time being. However, in the following 2 days, he occasionally experiences some hallucinations. Wherever you look, blood seeps out. So he didn't go to keep vigil that night either. During the day, he can be a bit stingy at times. No matter how he rested, the situation did not improve. At this moment he felt very conflicted inside. But still I comfort myself in my heart. Surely it's because of my own guilty conscience. So it's just scaring oneself. However, on the night of the seventh day, he had a dream. In his dream, he found himself in a pitch-black room, and there was the sound of hammering behind him. Turning to look, I found my father. "What are you nailing something onto?" Upon closer inspection, that nailed thing is clearly a child's head. But his father's expression gradually changed from kind to fierce. In the next moment, countless black shadows surged from the eye sockets of the skull and quickly surrounded him. And those shadows turned out to be fierce, ghostly faces. Seeing this scene, he instantly curled up in fear. The sound of nails being hammered in my ears grew louder. It even became ear-piercing. He tightly covered his ears, but it was of no use. The voice seemed to be coming from inside his head. The surrounding shadows surged towards him at that moment. Leave him nowhere to hide. At that moment he felt a sudden darkness and a splitting headache. Realizing while awake that I have become the child nailed to the board. But his own father ruthlessly drove a nail into his head. Lai Zhangping shouted loudly. The next second I woke up suddenly from the bed, suddenly realized that it was just a dream. At this moment he has confirmed that it is his deceased brother who is causing trouble. So he decided to dig out the corpse. Just then there came a knock at the door from the old butler. Notify him that the funeral time has come. Despite knowing the principles, one still harbors a sense of luck. It's not easy to dig up bones in front of the townspeople. He planned to wait until night to secretly dig it out. Just make him a small grave. Then he followed the old butler to go through the process. We can wait until the process is complete. As he carried his father's tablet towards the door, suddenly I saw the shadow that had appeared in my dreams. Those vengeful ghostly faces suddenly appeared before his eyes. Startled, he tripped over the threshold. Then it fell directly to the ground. The result was not just a big hole in the head. The person fainted. Seeing this scene, the sight instantly turned into chaos. A few people rushed forward and grabbed the one in the middle. "Call the doctor, call the doctor." Lai Zhangping slowly woke up after being pinched on the philtrum for a while. But as soon as he woke up, he pushed everyone away. Without caring about the blood on his head, he rushed toward the door. Then, right in front of everyone's eyes, he began to dig with his bare hands. This action made everyone present feel uneasy. Someone stepped forward to stop him, but was pushed aside by Lai Zhangping. Then he desperately continued to dig there. The fingers are all scraped, yet still digging there, just when everyone thought Lai Zhangping might be foolish. At that moment a bone was exposed. Then Lai Zhangping dug out the skeleton of a child from the pit. Once again I bowed to this skeleton a few times. Then he called the butler to quickly prepare another set of burial items like his father's. He wants to bury his father and this child together, although time has already been delayed. But that night, Lai Zhangping still went against everyone's opposition, buried this skeleton alongside my father's body. A few years later, Lai Zhangping indeed could not maintain the family business. Several failures and debts turned the Lai family from wealthy merchants into ordinary farmers. And this absurd and improper funeral also became the source of rumors. Some say Lai Zhangping failed because he offended old Yuan at the funeral. Some say the decline of the Lai family was due to the backlash from raising a spirit. But perhaps only he knows the truth of the matter. Andy brought friends home to visit after a long time. Unexpectedly, the friend took the opportunity to target his wife. It was a Saturday night. Lai Zhangping brought back 2 drinking buddies. As soon as I walked in, they were clamoring, saying they hadn't had enough to drink. The virtuous and beautiful wife understood the situation and brought out several plates of snacks to accompany the drinks. But after a while, Lai Zhangping couldn't handle his liquor and collapsed. Only the beautiful wife and 2 ill-intentioned guys were left. What people didn't expect was these 2 shameless guys. He picked up his phone and took a picture of Zhangping's wife's prominent cleavage. One guy wants to enjoy it together with Kuehua. Kuehua ran into the bathroom when she got scared. Then the 2 disgusting perverts began to relish. He started tasting the appetizers that Kuehua had prepared. The 2 looked at Lai Zhangping, who was unconscious. Just a second ago, they were mocking his drinking capacity. In the next moment, he started plotting how to take advantage of his wife. Looking at the career line I just captured, the 2 of them discussed going to see what a beautiful woman looks like upon her release from prison. Of course, such an exciting scene must be recorded. So the 2 of them carefully made their way to the bathroom. I thought it should be the sudden brilliance of spring. Unexpectedly, I witnessed a chilling scene. Kuehua held a pair of scissors in her hand. In the bathroom lies a blood child with holes all over. The once tall little tent was instantly crushed down. Once I reacted. Ran out without even putting on shoes, scared and panicking. A dog that accidentally fell ended up eating poop. Spit out the delicious food just eaten. Looking at their dire situation, Kuehua and her son Muson finally left with those 2 guys. Be cautious when making friends. Do not let your family worry and be sad. Episode 15, Spare Others When You Can. A man spent 10 million to have surgery to become a pig's head. The purpose is simply to be able to go to school. What exactly happened? It turns out a strange virus has emerged worldwide. Let humans be caught off guard. His head turned into a pig's head. Seeing this pig-headed person, Agu felt a strong resistance deep down. The next day, Xiao Qiang from the class has turned into a pig's head. He also said that anyone who doesn't love a certain unlucky friend should come out, or leave a like to protect yourself with a dog head. Agu was originally the school's well-known target for jokes. Seeing Xiao Qiang turn into Zhu Tu Qiang, he wants to show him some real consequences. The result was that Xiao Qiang's pants started to make dangerous moves. He thinks that the pig-headed man is just a pig, not worth any sympathy at all. But the next day, in school, the joke about Agen turns her into a pig's head. Still ended up with Zhu Taoqiang. Agu found it very displeasing. Why can't even Zhu Tu Qiang find a girlfriend? Are you planning to have a whole house full of piglets in the future? The mocked pighead Qiang deeply hated Agu. He hopes that Agu will one day face retribution. The consequences have truly arrived. On this day during class, the teacher has turned into a pig's head. Agu became even more unwilling to attend class. But Agu never expected. Even their own parents turned into pig heads. Suddenly, I lost my appetite for food. Even Agu's lackeys have started turning into pig heads. Mazzy cried as he hugged Agu's thigh. I hope he doesn't dislike me. But a dog was already very resistant to the pig's head. How can one accept a pig-headed person as a friend? He kicked away his henchman who had followed him for many years. Don't ever appear in front of me again. But this world is slowly starting to change. More and more pig-headed people are appearing. Advertisements on the street. The mannequins in the clothing store are mainly featuring pig-headed people as the highlight series. Only Agu has not turned into a pig's head yet. So everyone started to complain about Agu still being a burden. In everyone's eyes, Agu instead became the outlier. Even his former underlings have teamed up with Zhu Taoke. Together, we taught a Gu a lesson, once the most formidable Zio Ba. Now, he has fallen to being the outcast of the entire school. He thinks how crazy this world is. Just stay at home for the rest of your life. But one day, a group of Buddhist nuns came to visit. Without saying a word, they took a Gu away, because he is one of the few remaining heads in the world. In the eyes of scientists, he is the most valuable resource. A Gu's face turned green at once, because he didn't know what was waiting for him. When he arrived at the laboratory, only then did I realize that many people's heads had been caught, trapped in this so-called observation room. But many of those who were caught gradually turned into pig-headed people. Only a Gu was left as a human head. The doctor said he has a special antibody in his body. So every day was filled with injections, surgeries, and check-ups. The imprisoned Gu was suffering greatly. Slowly, he also wanted to become a pig-headed person. On this day, taking advantage of the guard's negligence, he successfully escaped. But he never expected. The police officer locked up in the research institute